A Pirkei Avot quorum.
There you go. So we are in my edition. We're at Mishnah 11. We read it last time, but we really didn't discuss it that much. Mishnah 11 in chapter 3, and also it sort of can also go together with. I mean, there are 3 different Mishnayot that are recorded in his name, in this sage's name, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, but the first 2 ones very much go together. So let's read it one more time, and this time let's read Mishnah 11 and Mishnah 12, and then we can discuss them. And first we'll do the more consensus type translation, and Josie is here, so she can share with us the Rabbi Shapiro translation. Okay, Geraldine, go.
Mishnah 11. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa taught, when one gives priority to reverence over wisdom, his wisdom will be enduring. But when one gives priority to wisdom over reverence, his wisdom will not be enduring. And number 12, this was a favorite teaching of his. When a person's good deeds exceed his wisdom will be enduring. But when a person's wisdom exceeds his good deeds, his wisdom will not be enduring.
Okay, so we have here, Sarita.
We have a really different translation. Instead of reverence, it is he in whom the fear of sin comes before wisdom. Yeah,
right.
And that's what the Hebrew is. The Hebrew is state.
Yes, that's as much as we actually noticed last time. We didn't get very far, like I said, but yes, that difference in the Hebrew, it's yirat chet-o, right? The fear of his sin, and not just fear of sin, fear of his sin, right? Or his fear of sin. It could be read one or either way. Yes. So we can come back to that. What's being referred to again and again and again is the wisdom, right? A person has some wisdom, and the implication is that they want their wisdom to be enduring. And then Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa said, well, there are certain conditions that will affect whether your wisdom will endure. In Hebrew, mitkayemet, or not. And the preconditions are 2. One is to prioritize, to put forward beforehand, to make your reverence or your fear of sin come first before your wisdom, whatever that means. And then the other is that your actions should be more numerous or greater in number. Merubim means a lot more than your wisdom, whatever that means. So we don't know what those things actually mean yet. We're going to have to discuss that. But in both of those cases, the wisdom comes second, although the wisdom is in the end what the person is looking to preserve or to promote. So before we go further, let's just see, Josie, can you read those two statements, please?
Rabbi Shapiro's is different.
Yeah.
Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa teaches, if your concern for others exceeds your desire for wisdom, your wisdom will endure. If your desire for wisdom exceeds your concern for others, your wisdom will not endure. And number 12, he also said, if your kindness exceeds your wisdom will endure. If your wisdom exceeds your kindness, your wisdom will not endure.
Okay, so his translation, as always, is a little different, and as always, it gives a certain amount of interpretation to the phrases, right? He spins the phrases in a certain direction. Okay, but this gives us a running start. Jen, is it working now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Then it's working. Yay.
Okay. So we open the floor. Who would like to give some commentary on this? what is he talking about, and why is he think that this is important, and what do we think? What do you think? Anybody? Yeah, Sarita.
So I think both the more traditional translation and Rabbi Shapiro's translation seem to prioritize thinking about other people, thinking about the implications of on other people of what you do, as opposed to thinking about yourself.
Okay. But think about yourself in a specific way. Think about yourself in terms of your wisdom.
Right. So it's sort of wow, I'm marvelous. I'm so wise. Yeah.
Right. So marvelous.
Which we all
could be-
know, but
you can have different kinds of criteria for marvelous. So here is specifically talking about sagacity, being a wise person, and you want to think of yourself as a wise person. You want to think that you have wisdom, that you get it, that you understand the world, that you understand reality, that you understand Torah. And Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa says, well, there's a temptation to put that first, but no, there are other things that come first. And the way that Rabbi Shapiro translates the first phrase, so one translation we had was reverence, which is a general kind of idea of reverence. Could be reverence for God, it could be a kind of a reverence for creation, a kind of sense of awe and amazement about the world itself. And that would be a kind of a humbling attitude to have. The more literal translation, like Sarita pointed out, is to be concerned lest one sin, right? I don't want to commit a sin. So Rabbi Shapiro humanizes that realm completely, right? He's not interested in did I keep Shabbat properly or not. He's interested in did I treat another human being properly or not. Now, of course, treating another human being properly is a mitzvah, and not treating another human being properly is a sin. We just had it yesterday. That's the essence of Kedoshim, but Kedoshim has both. Kedoshim says both things are important, and they are all part of the path to holiness. So there are ritual sins that you might think have nothing to do with anybody, that don't hurt anybody, victimless crimes. But nevertheless, the Torah says, no, this is actually important. So again, Rabbi Shapiro is speaking for so many people who say, that's not really what I'm going to have reverence for even. I'm not going to be concerned about those kinds of sins. I would say, Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa would actually say, no, then you think you're wise, but guess what? You don't have fear of sin. That's an example, I think, that he would point out as you think that you've got wisdom here when you don't, because you've already decided what's important and what's not, and you've prioritized your perspective on what makes sense and what is truly meaningful, when we have given on a silver platter all kinds of directives that don't depend on whether you think they're wise or not, and they come first. I would say, in the name of Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, I have that temerity to say that I really do believe that he would not be happy with Rabbi Shapiro's half of a loaf. He wouldn't argue with that. Rabbi Shapiro's statement is important. If you're not a mensch, then forget about being wise, for sure. But there are other things as well that go beyond your own wisdom that come first. That's what Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, I think, is very emphatically trying to say. And your wisdom will not endure if you don't see that and accept that. Yeah, Josie.
I could see why Rabbi Hanina would look at Rabbi Shapiro's interpretation and shake his head. But in a modern world, this is much easier to understand and to try to do than to follow a lot of rules and laws that most people have never even thought about.
Speak
much
for
less
yourself.
follow.
Speak for yourself. If you think that the interpersonal stuff is easier to do than making sure that you light candles on Friday night, then I think that you're a special kind of person. I think that actually the great danger that we see again and again and again is that it's a lot easier for people to go through the minutia and to go through the details and not be, God forbid, sinning in all kinds of ritual things, and they don't treat other people right. So I think that each one can be very difficult in its own way, and each one is supposed to be very meaningful in its own way. And that's what I'm pushing. What I'm pushing is that there's a total package that all of the sages and that Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, I'm certain, bought into. And you're right, this is a much more modern approach, which is, saying, it's the humanistic part that's really the important part. Sarita.
So a question and a comment. So the comment is in terms of sort of relationship to God and such, I guess in my mind, it's sort of contingent on the relationship with other people, right? So don't think that you're doing such a great job because, oh, wow, I pray and I this connection with God when if you're not treating your other people well, right? So that the relationship that you form with other people and the caring for other people, is critical to your relationship to God. So that's a comment. And then my question is yes, we have all these mitzvot. Is it a sin? Is not doing a mitzvah a sin? I mean, I guess I see that as a really strong word.
So I was trying to be gentle and generous and not point out doing negative things. So I pointed out not doing a positive thing. But obviously murdering people is a very bad sin. For the Torah, breaking Shabbat is a capital offense. You die for breaking Shabbat the same way that you die for killing somebody. So I just, out of respect for our community, I didn't want to say that because it's worthless to say that. So I didn't say that. But yes, if you have a mitzvah to do and you don't do it, then you have transgressed a positive obligation. You're being called upon to do something you don't. I mean, if we think about our own relationships with people, if we think about people that we count on to do some things, whether it's children, students, friends, partners, and you agree that person will do something and they don't do it. If you've depended on them to do that, then that's a sin. So we don't like to think that way. We like to think that those kinds of things are innocuous in terms of rituals and in terms of whatever positive commandments there are. The mitzvah to give stuff. You walk by a person, the person asks you for help, and you don't do it. Is that a sin? That's not doing a positive thing. So, I think it's conceivable to think about sin in that kind of respect as well. When you are letting somebody down, to put it again in terms that we can relate to, then that's a sin. And we had yesterday the Torah reading, love your friend, your fellow as yourself. Rashi says, who's your friend? God. Love God as much as you love yourself. So that includes all of the ritual and all of the other details that God said, I want you to do this for me. I want you to do this for me. I want you to do that for me. I don't want you to do that, because it's important for me that you don't do it. So Rashi's interpretation is yes, all of those things are like betraying a friend. If you do or don't do what you're supposed to not do or whatever, etc. So yeah, that's the holistic approach. Yeah, anybody else want to chime in? So what about the next part that that he says? He says there's another condition to preserving your wisdom, and that condition is, according to the way we have our general translation, your deeds should exceed your wisdom. Rabbi Shapiro says something slightly different. What does he say? One more time.
He uses, if your kindness exceeds your wisdom will endure.
Right. So I think it's the same thing.
Kindness, and what was the traditional
Actions.
action?
So again, he's transposing a big general term of actions into one specific realm, into interpersonal actions, right? Not necessarily all the other kinds of actions, right? Did you make a blessing before you ate the fruit? He doesn't care about that, unless you want to start talking about kindness in some other way that most people are not thinking about. He's talking about treating another person kindly. And of course, that's not anything that I would argue with. Of course, you have to be kind. There's a wonderful saying that Rabbi Heschel is credited with saying. He said, when I was young, I really admired smart people. When I got older, I really admired kind people. So there's a certain, as a person, Rabbi Heschel lived in, the world of scholarship, the world of Torah learning, and so on. And he was also young. And there's a propensity like that, right? There's a propensity to, that person is really smart. That professor is really exciting and interesting, and so on. Which brings me to maybe the easiest for me area where this kind of stuff actually can be experimentally tested, and that's academia. Right? Academia is all about, look at that wise person. Look at that person who has so much knowledge. Look at that person who has so much perception and has made a breakthrough in the way we think about this or that or the other thing. And Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, to me, is like saying specifically, look around academia and see how many people there are actually knocking themselves out to be decent human beings, right? As opposed to being, the person who wins that prize and who gets that, that publishing contract and so on and so forth. Stuart Green was, we were studying some Talmud. He comes to the Talmud session, and he pointed out a couple of years ago a very depressing, research report that professors of ethics turn out to be not any better than anybody else, or sometimes worse ethically than anybody else. And that's a clear example of putting the wisdom ahead of the actions and ahead of a fear of sin. So, this is a really human temptation. Wisdom is a big temptation. To be seen as wise, or to feel oneself as have accumulated knowledge and so on, is a very, very heady, literally heady, tempting goal. And unfortunately, it really sometimes makes people forget about the values of life that are truly important. So that's one particular situation. Josie, yeah.
Especially in a place like Montclair, where the bigger your academic achievements and success, the more people, admire you. I mean, I have a granddaughter who's one of the most important people in the world to me, who dropped out of college, and she's working on a farm in California, and the family's, oh my God, is she going to go back to school? What happens if she doesn't go back to college? Can she make a life on a farm? I guess she can, if it's all about this sustainable agriculture. But yes, this is a big issue in the family right now.
Right. So, money and wisdom sometimes get also mixed together. Concern for whether the person's actually going to make a living is it's a real concern. But yeah, Jews have that very much that status thing about intellectual stuff. White collar versus blue collar. Plumbers make really good livings, but in general, the Jewish stereotype isn't, oh, my child a plumber. No, my child a doctor. No offense, Lou. My child the lawyer, the professor. So there's in America, in Europe, this was not necessarily the case.
I was just about to ask about Israel. Like Israel has to have plumbers. There must be some Jewish plumbers in Israel.
Right. There are. But again, there's look, the part of the transit, a trend that's part of the entire world of going away from manufacturing and from hand labor in general. There's a bitter joke. We just finished Yom HaAtzmaut in the Israel Independence Day. So there's a bitter joke that was from years ago, where a grandfather is walking with their young child, and they're walking along, and the grandfather says, "You see that building over there? I worked on that building. I laid the bricks and the cement, and I carried the beams and the whole thing." And the little, that's one pane of a couple of panes in the cartoon. And then the last pane in the cartoon is that the little child looks up to their grandfather and says, "So, Saba, I didn't know that you were an Arab." Because that kind of work is not done by Jews anymore. So it's a painful fact that these things have come about. But again, to bring it back to Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, he's also talking about ritual acts. He's talking about doing mitzvot, and the mitzvot are not only social action. And don't quote me as being against, the rabbi is against social action. I am not against social justice, okay? Let me just say that up front. But I'm also for other mitzvot. When Yonah was preparing for his bar mitzvah, we had a discussion about what a mitzvah project might be. And I said, studying Torah is a mitzvah project. Deciding to study an extra, piece of Torah, we were going to study Gemara together. Didn't work out that way. But the idea was that's a mitzvah too. That's a mitzvah project. It doesn't only have to be raising money for poor people, which is a mitzvah and very important and terrific. But there are different. The idea is to expand our perspectives about what can or what can't be counted as meaningful. So these are challenging statements. I want to focus just a little bit on that last piece. We're pretty much at the end, and that is where he says his wisdom, the person's wisdom, will not endure. What does that mean, that the wisdom won't endure? I mean, is that really true? That the person published 22 books. They abused their students. They were terrible human beings. But aren't they still considered the great intellectual models of their field and so on? What do you mean that their wisdom doesn't endure? That doesn't seem true.
Isn't all academic, well, a great deal, not all, but a great deal of academic knowledge is impermanent. A great deal of it never even gets past an ivory tower. It's academics writing to other academics. So how much impact they will have is probably not a very permanent thing.
Okay, so then actually what Rabbi,
Although that's true even if you're a great person too, so.
but then maybe what Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa is doing is actually, because since he's talking about how important wisdom is to the person he's addressing, saying you really, really love your wisdom and you want to be perceived as wise. Well, guess what? You want your your books to be considered classics. You don't want them to be forgotten and be thrown into the garbage, when the next big work comes out that overrules what you said or makes the next way. So what Jen is saying is that's one of the fears of people also, and there's a sort of competition in the academic world, right? You want to slay the predecessor. Harold Bloom talked about this to a certain extent, right? You want to one up. You want to show that you understand human psychology better than Freud. So you point out how Freud was wrong, or you want to write a poem that's better than Yeats or something like that. But watch out! Then the next person, in another year or two or generation, will then slay you as the predecessor, right? So what will make your work enduring? So Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa gives this as a particular guideline. Okay, so Rita, and then we have to stop.
That's an interesting perspective, because if you view anyone with new ideas as sort of competition, then you might think, they are slaying me. But if you are sort of working with your students and such, so that they will view themselves as building on what you've done, then your wisdom endures, because even if they disagree with you, they're still working off of what you gave them. Yeah.
Right. We don't have time to pursue that, but that's a very important perception to focus on. Next time, God willing. Okay, Zeig gesund, everybody.
Bye, everyone.